absolutely love watching Shaaba's videos and Jammidodger as well. Shaaba does this series which I really enjoy where she responds to Am I the Arsehole posts on Reddit. I went on Reddit and I didn't realise like how many of these Am I the Arsehole posts there were. It's like a huge thing, and I typed in autism and so many came up and I was like, oh, this could be super interesting. So I've got my husband to choose some and I'm gonna read them and we're gonna decide if these people are the a-holes. If you don't know what it is, which I didn't before watching Shaaba's videos, basically people who have done something that everyone else around them is telling them, you shouldn't have done that thing, you're the arsehole, but they're like, am I in the wrong? Let me turn to Reddit and ask them what they think. And then people on Reddit get to vote and they say, yes, you are the arsehole, or they say you're not the arsehole, or they can say everybody sucks here, which means everyone is the asshole. Well, it's asshole on here, but I'm English, so I'm gonna say asshole. I just think it sounds better, okay? I'm sorry. The first one, it starts off really strong. Am I the asshole for hiding my daughter's autism from her? I'm just gonna give you a second to let that sink in. Like, are you okay? I've not even read the whole post yet, but straight away I'm like, yeah, yes you are. What? I don't know, maybe there's more context and more nuance to it, but like in what circumstance would this ever be okay? Like, would you have a child who was visually impaired and just not tell them and just send them out into the world and they're stumbling around coming up against all these obstacles and just not inform them that they have this disability and just let them suffer through it and feel like a failure? Like, no, do not do this. I'll reserve judgment until I've read it, but like, you are Reddit. You are 100% gonna know there's something different about you. I was diagnosed in my mid-20s. I spent my entire time in primary school and high school being called weird and a freak. You're not protecting your child by not giving them the label of autism. It's not going to remove the autism. It's not like they're going to be more autistic because they know about it now. You're just going to make their life a misery. But let's read it. So pretty much most of her life, our daughter, 14 female, had various issues. She had speech delay, didn't make eye contact, was extremely hyperactive, had trouble making friends, fidgeted a lot, was extremely strict with rules, and a whole bunch of other stuff. My wife and I suspected she might be autistic and we took her to a psychologist when she was 4. The psychologist diagnosed her with hyperactivity disorder, although we don't know if it coexists with her autism or it was a misdiagnosis. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to know where like ADHD and autism, like where does one end and the other begin, and it's so common that people are diagnosed with both. I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how the research and all of that develops over the years. From 8 to 11, we gave our daughter as much early intervention as possible. She'd seen behavioural and speech therapists. That was a weird placing of a bracket there. She was able to speak but had a speech impediment. I've given her various books about how to make and keep friends. At that point she was a bookworm. Oh no, this is making me sad. Here we are, we'll cure your autism. Don't worry, we've got you a copy of How to Win Friends and Influence People. They're trying to teach her how to mask. Okay, yeah, I was also a bookworm. My parents didn't buy me such books. We got her placed in a social class. I mean, it's all just, yeah, it's masking school. Here you go. I was also placed in a social skills class, but I was not diagnosed with anything at that point, and maybe this should have been a clue. I don't think my mum was told I was put in a social skills class with a guy who was diagnosed with autism. Any one of these things could have been the missing piece to help me not have to go 25 years without a diagnosis. It wasn't until the end of her 4th grade year that she actually got diagnosed with autism. I don't know how old that is, but I mean, they said 8 to 11, so I'm assuming around that. Her psychologist was excited to tell her, but my wife was against it. Ah, okay. I just assumed it was a mother writing this. I don't know why. That's sexist of me, isn't it? I mean, maybe it is actually. Maybe it's her other mother. Maybe she has 2 mothers, so you know what? I wasn't being sexist. It's fine. She wanted to wait until we felt our daughter was old enough to understand. We are aware of the stigma neurodivergent people experience and didn't want our daughter to go through that. I agreed to hid it from her until she reached adulthood. Don't hid it from her. I wasn't diagnosed, so maybe going to primary school in the early 2000s, perhaps I would have come up against stigma having been diagnosed, and maybe there would have been different pain involved in that than the pain that I had of just being different and a bit broken and not really knowing why, just a bit of a failure. I don't know, but I think, nah, I imagine I would still choose to go back and be diagnosed. Oh, it just seems like such a human right to know about your own medical situation, you know? It just seems so unethical. When our daughter got into grade 6, she was bullied due to her autistic traits. She was gaslit, taken advantage of, had many false friends who backstabbed her. This is quite a common experience, unfortunately, of autistic people. It made our daughter insecure about her poor social skills, and that was when she started to mask. Oh, you know about masking then. Okay. It left her with such immense trauma that she still has triggers and is in therapy. Okay. She was diagnosed 2 years before this in 4th grade, but now she's in 6th grade and she's being bullied due to her autistic traits. So now maybe might be a good time to tell her, because now we've tested, we've run the experiment, we've realized that she's still going to be stigmatized regardless of whether she knows about it or not. So maybe now is the time to say, how old is she now? Now she's 14 and that was grade 6. Well, she was 8 to 11. I don't know how old she was 4th grade. You know what, there's Google. Why am I acting like Google is not a thing?
How old is someone in 6th grade?
11 to 12. Okay, now she's 14. This was 2 years ago. Today she came to us and asked, what is autism? We told her it is a different way of thinking. Okay, so if you're going to explain it in such a nice way, why didn't you just tell her that in the first place? She was confused since she didn't know what we meant, in a sense that autistic people have a different brain chemistry from neurotypicals. After we elaborated, she told us the reason why she asked. She found out she is autistic. It almost seems like they are undermining her intelligence, or because she is disabled, seeing her as having a less right to know about her own medical stuff, her own brain. It is so valuable to have had a diagnosis at that age to somebody who didn't get a diagnosis at that age and didn't know. I'm just like, how could you gatekeep that information? Yes, of course she's gonna be traumatized. She found her own medical records lying around and read them out of curiosity. Why were they lying around? I don't know, like what was maybe they were moving house or something and things were out. I don't know. Maybe you kind of wanted her to know. She was upset and asked us how we could hide this from her. We explained that we wanted to tell her when she was older, since we didn't want her to get hurt by other people. But she can still choose whether she discloses it to other people. I suppose a child might just say, well, I'm autistic, but I don't know, if you were diagnosed younger and you knew about it, let me know kind of how that was and how that affected you. I don't have that experience. I mean, she must have known there was something different about her having to go to all these classes, unless she thought that everybody did that, you know, like the social skills and going to all the therapies. Like, she probably just felt pretty broken, which is not fun. She angrily yelled that she did get hurt anyways. Yeah, she said that all this time she thought there was something wrong with her, but it weren't for us. She wouldn't have taken the bullying to heart. She would have felt differently, but instead we made her pain worse. Now she's in her room crying, refuses to speak to either of us. We are starting to wonder if we should have told her about autism when we knew. We are starting to wonder. How do we even apologize for something like that? You are the asshole. Do you have to ask that question? Definitely. I can kind of see the warped logic of how you thought you were protecting your child, and I understand that previous generations kind of see autism and ADHD and neurodevelopmental things and any sort of mental health condition as well as kind of like, oh, they've got a screw loose, you know, something's not quite right, but that's not the world we're in anymore. And I mean, they seem to have a pretty good understanding of where the autism community is at, which is why it's just confusing. Do teachers know? Was she given like extra support in school, but she just didn't know why? I don't know. That would be interesting to know as well, because like surely the whole point is that you can get accommodations. I mean, 14 is old. Like, it sounds young when you're older now and you're looking back, but at the time when you're 14, that doesn't feel young, you know? You're making a lot of decisions, and for like safety reasons it can be important to know. She could have been a part of the autistic community online. She could have been on TikTok, feeling supported and feeling less alone. This is bad. Let's see what other people say. I doubt anyone's gonna say that they're not the arsehole. The OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the arsehole. I may be the arsehole for not telling my daughter she's autistic, blah, 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 in order to protect her from ableism. I'm pretty sure that kind of was ableism. I don't know, it feels a little bit like you were undermining her intelligence somehow and her autonomy. Is that just because she's a child, perhaps? Maybe that had nothing to do with autism. I don't know, but like, children are people who have to go out in the world and live their own lives too. Like, hi, autistic woman here, exclamation mark, you are the arsehole, full stop. Thank you. That's all that needs to be said, really, isn't it? We can just move on. If I could have had my diagnosis from that age and my parents had hidden it from me, I never would have spoken to them again. Yes. Yeah, I kind of feel that. Oh my god, if I just imagine how I felt at 14, I was dealing with a lot of people being very nasty. I'd had a tricky time at primary school before that, and I found a medical record saying I was autistic. I would be so mad and heartbroken, to be honest. You have so much internalized ableism that you actually thought her not knowing the truth about herself would be better. It kind of almost feels a little bit like you were in denial, and you thought that if you didn't speak about it and you looked the other way and you took her to lots of classes, that you might be able to kind of get rid of it. I don't know. Is there any other way to say that? You say it's because other kids would have bullied her, but do you just wish she wasn't autistic? Getting my diagnosis has brought me more peace than anything in my life. Genuinely, if you want to talk to an autistic adult about how to treat your daughter from now on, I'm here, no shame. That's quite sweet. You are the asshole, of course. She probably had so much self-hatred and self-doubt and trauma due to lack of diagnosis. Yes, so much self-hatred. So much self-hatred. Just hope she's young enough to get the interventions she needs. Yeah, because how could she advocate and say, you know what, I've done some of my own research. You said she's a bookworm. She seems like she's pretty intelligent. She could have gone away and gone, oh, I've seen some autistic people. They have this, or their schools let them do this, or whatever. Could I maybe have that as well? It's just even little things like dislike of certain textures of food and how stupid you can feel for that. Like, oh, everyone else can eat this food. Nobody else is this picky, you know? And like feeling like a weird alien for things like that, and like just being able to have this reason behind it and go, I just don't like eating that because I'm autistic. I'm a bit funny with textures. That's okay. I don't have to eat what everyone else is eating. I just need to find my own way to have a healthy and balanced diet. See, different energy there than trying to like bulldoze yourself through square peg into a round hole, like trying to jam yourself in. You know, that's how it feels when you're not diagnosed. You are the arsehole. I haven't spoken to my mother in almost 3 years because I found out she hid my autism diagnosis from me that I received 20 years ago. Has anyone else had this happen to them? I'm really sorry if you have. My autism made my life a living hell my entire childhood, and I can't help but imagine how much easier it would have been if I had just been given the proper accommodations and help I so desperately needed. She has every right to be angry with you. People treat their autistic children like toddlers and act like they'd never understand themselves, and then are shocked when their kids spend their entire life feeling like they're drowning because they don't know what's wrong with them. Yep, I've said this before. I literally used to imagine that my school week was like water and I was drowning in it, and I was trying to struggle to get to the other end, and then the weekend would be this life raft where I'd be able to recover. My only recommendation is family therapy at this point. Your daughter deserves honesty and respect, something it seems she has been deprived of for her entire life so far. She needed to know this diagnosis. Now she has a name for what she is feeling and why she feels different. You gave away her bodily autonomy by not telling her. You withheld medical information from her that was important for her to know. She is not going to recover from this massive breach of trust easily, if at all. You have some serious ground to make up with this child. Do you understand that this entire time she will have been thinking her personality is the problem? This was all a year ago, so I'm hoping that she's discovered the autistic community. She'll be 15 now. I hope she's okay as she can be. Someone said they have an autistic son, that he's 12, they've been explaining it to him since he was 4, something he's very aware of, and so is everyone around him. He is proud of his autism. Yeah, I mean, like, they spoke quite positive language within the post about autism. If they could have spoken to their daughter in that way. It also helps others to keep an eye out and make sure that no one takes advantage or bully him. Staff and students. Yeah, did her teachers know? I explained that while some things are more difficult for him because of it, everyone has things that they aren't good at or struggle with. You never gave her that choice. It was a dirty secret and she felt wrong or weird because of it. Weird is awesome, not bad. Neurodivergent people don't face stigma because our neurodivergences are named. We face stigma because our neurodivergence causes us to behave, feel, and think differently than neurotypical people. You didn't make her not autistic by refusing to tell her about her diagnosis. You just took away her ability to understand why she's always felt so different. You are the arsehole. You didn't protect her from anything at all. Thank you, Lewis, for giving me such an awful read. Oh dear. Let's do another one and hope it's not quite so bad. So this is, am I the asshole for joking about autism? Growing up, I had some trouble with my classmates and neighbour kids. I was always very interested in social interaction and wanted to make friends, but it didn't work out for me as a kid. Relatable. I was a classic outcast and was moved into a special needs class. There were meetings with my parents and doctor's appointments, but my mom wasn't having it. She's an amazing mom, but she doesn't believe in meds, and she always said if I had a formal diagnosis, jobs would find out disregard and reject me. She's antiquated but a lovely person. Okay, so we're seeing a few parallels, but this person didn't even go for the diagnosis. Alright, it depends what the job is, but most jobs it's kind of up to you if you disclose. I'm sure there probably are some careers where you kind of have to say, and where a diagnosis could still potentially jeopardize it depending on what country you're in. That's a shame. It is a shame. I don't know when this was or how old this person is. I took many years of speech class, and even at a young age I knew the therapists were just trying to make me more likable or relatable to people, not literally working on my auditory skills. Okay, so yeah. Masking school again. Another episode of masking school. High school came and went with me sitting alone at lunch every day. I didn't take it personally, and I spent my time observing. I can relate to that, yeah. I was curious about my classmates that seemed more likable and watched them and applied it to my behaviour. Masking! I really wanted to improve myself and make friends eventually. I picked the most interesting popular people and practiced their behaviour. It worked, yep. I had the same experience and it worked, yep. I'm still myself, but my social timing and expressions were on point, making friends in college. I did so well. I was able to show myself to people. I showed off what I liked about myself without them giving me that look. That look! Oh my gosh, you're so right! It finally made sense to me once I realised I was autistic, because like I would try my best and think I was being super like friendly and normal, and you'd just be met with this like look of confusion. Even as an adult sometimes, I'd be in situations and people would just look like, I don't know where to put you. My first job was in a small town and I was anxious, but people liked me there too. I made friends quickly and they were warm, kind people. However, the autistic, beautiful mind comments flowed freely. I was getting on with my PhD program and honestly didn't mind the jokes. Okay, so that even though you were masking and doing well, people still could tell there was something a bit different about you, which, yeah, that's common. These people invited me to hang out, offered their help, and dropped off banana bread when they had extra. They were playful about my weird habits and I appreciated my place with them. They always assumed I was on the spectrum. I thought the transparency was refreshing. Jokes were to my face and not behind my back. Yeah, I mean, you often find that children can be quite mean, but as you get older, people tend to be a little bit more tolerant of difference depending on kind of like what circle you're in and what sort of people you're associating with. Children are just pretty cruel. Back at campus, I had nonchalantly, I can't say that word properly, I had nonchalantly joked about my autism, parroting the jokes I had heard. After a time or two, my co-worker asked how old I was when I diagnosed. I had to tell them I wasn't, I was just joking. I didn't mean to offend, but people were really mad at me. I don't feel it's negative to be autistic and it's something that can't be joked about, but I guess I don't have the right to say that if I'm not diagnosed. I feel really bad. I'm sorry, Reddit. Oh. So I think that was kind of an error of masking in a way. They maybe were used to kind of copying things that people did in like social situations. I've certainly did this a few times in my life. People would make a joke in one context and people would laugh and I wouldn't necessarily find it all that funny, but I'd be like, that seemed to go down well, and then I kind of copy and paste it and say it in a different situation and then people would be like, that's not funny, what are you saying? And it was like, I felt awful because I was like, yeah, I didn't even find it funny, I was literally just saying it for your benefit and then you didn't even like it, kind of thing. I would say not the arsehole. I think you probably just have to explain. Apologise if I offended anyone. I'm pretty sure I am. I've always been pretty sure I am on the spectrum. I just didn't get a diagnosis because my mom just didn't believe in it, unfortunately. I mean, maybe a diagnosis is something you want to pursue now. I don't know how you feel about that. If you're just content with knowing that you're on the spectrum, then it's fine. And yeah, then you'd be kind of maybe have a bit more freedom to make these jokes. That is one of the kind of horrible things about if you don't have an official diagnosis but you're very sure you're autistic and the people close to you are very sure you're autistic maybe, but then like, you know, if you end up in a situation where someone's like, oh, are you actually diagnosed? Like, you don't want to lie. Like, oh, well, no, but I'm sure I am. I've done a lot of research on the internet. Like, even though you probably will have done a lot of really hardcore research, it still just sounds like you've googled once the traits of autism and gone, that's me, and people are still going to be weird about it. I mean, I want to know what the jokes were. We didn't get to hear what any of the jokes were. Let's see what people said. Not the arsehole. Autism isn't an exclusive club. There are lots of barriers to a formal diagnosis and it's perfectly valid to acknowledge that about yourself without having a formal diagnosis. If it's accessible to you, a formal diagnosis may give you access to more resources. But even if you're never formally diagnosed, it's perfectly acceptable to identify as autistic and still have that as part of your social identity. It makes you feel more understood, right? So go for it. You're doing nothing wrong and you don't need to justify yourself. The problem is if people ask you directly, are you diagnosed? How old were you when you were diagnosed? It's then like, how would you respond to that? I don't know what the jokes are specifically, but if you're worried they might have been offensive somehow, I'd ask other autistic people. Let them know you're newer to the community because of your mom's belief and ask them for help understanding if these jokes are offensive. I mean, you said the beautiful mind thing and stuff, so maybe it was just like comparisons to like autism in like films and stuff like that, where your identity intensity is not the problem. There's a chance you made the joke that was offensive because you didn't understand it, but there's also a chance that the person was just overreacting. Okay, so they actually replied. They're called I'm Doing My Best. It's their name. I appreciate your input. The jokes were mainly self-deprecating, like, sorry, I don't understand your sarcasm, it's just the autism. Okay. Well, my boss asked me in front of a group of people to be more personable, and I said, I tried to push past the spectrum. I love that. Okay, no, I think that's funny. I was really embarrassed. I made up a joke to lighten things, but then I'd felt bad if the jokes bothered someone. Oh. It sounds like you're fine, to be honest. With your boss, maybe ask for specific tips. Oh gosh, this is a bit of an interesting take. Not gonna lie, the first joke may irk me depending on the situation, so that's the saying, sorry, I don't understand your sarcasm, it's just the autism. Having worked with autistic people who don't try to improve themselves. Okay. It would bring up some sad annoyance. I don't expect people to be neurotypical, I'm not in brackets, but working with people who refuse to be any less irritating or not being helpful is annoying as F, especially when you know they're smart enough to learn. I mean, the OP kind of has said that he did learn, that he did mask a lot throughout his life, so I mean, that's a little bit harsh, and it was a joke as well. Not understanding someone's sarcasm is not really the biggest crime on earth. You obviously must have understood that you didn't understand in order to make a joke about it, so it shows some self-awareness. I think it is just the difficult one of like wanting to disclose your diagnosis if you don't have an official diagnosis, how to navigate that with people who are outside of the community who don't understand. I mean, you could explain why diagnosis is not accessible to many people and how many practitioners don't know how to diagnose adult autism and all of those barriers to people, and then maybe they'll understand. But some people just, you know, like to be like, oh, you've said something offensive, you know, even though they're not part of that group themselves and they maybe don't understand. It might just have been someone who was just trying to catch you out because they enjoy being outraged and on a high horse for no reason. I don't know. Someone responded and said, that sounds like a you problem. Not understanding sarcasm isn't someone refusing to be less irritating or not being helpful. It's a feature of their neurodevelopment, yeah. Using the joke to diffuse tension in an awkward situation is fine, and this isn't a situation where someone is displaying behaviours that are to the detriment of people around him. Yeah, he's just trying to explain what's going on and what his challenges are. He is clearly rather uncomfortable doing so. Also, his posts clearly demonstrate that he's willing and able to learn how to navigate social situations. Your comment is full of projection. Yeah. You said you don't expect people to be neurotypical, but it does sound like you expect autistic people to mask for your comfort. Yeah, but often autistic people themselves can sometimes be the biggest kind of advocate of like, oh, we should try our best to be normal. I think because you're just so scared of being seen as different that you become like obsessed with conforming almost. Not the arsehole. Everything about how you wrote it suggests you're on the spectrum. Yeah. Perhaps as part of the training observing, you should also consider the audience for jokes and the times to say them. It can be difficult to judge though, I understand. Not the arsehole. I read once that most people who self-diagnose themselves as ASD are, and that is extremely rare for a non-ASD person to self-diagnose, but you are definitely on the spectrum, I think. There was a social misfire that you can explain away. Yeah. So what do you think? It might be useful to maybe comment about what you think somebody in that situation where they're pretty sure they're autistic, they like being acknowledged as an autistic person, but they are self-diagnosed, and when they talk about autism, people ask them questions directly about the diagnosis, kind of like, what would you say in that situation? I don't know, it is quite nice to be able to turn around and say, oh yeah, I have an official diagnosis with this, this and this. At the same time, I completely believe self-diagnosis is valid. Like before my formal diagnosis, I was 100% convinced I was autistic. Like I was already freely calling myself autistic before then, but it just was, you know, that external validation, mainly for the sake of other people, like accommodations from my university and stuff like that. I'm self-employed, so without my university course, maybe I wouldn't have had a reason to get an official diagnosis. If you like this video, you might like this one where I react to some actually autistic TikToks, which were amazing, and I really enjoyed them, even though I'm very scared of TikTok. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!